Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another wonderful, power-packed GPAP webinar session. We are glad to have you today's session where we shall be talking about how to build a powerful brand through podcasting mastery. Once again, thank you very much for joining. So as we wait for the other colleagues of ours to join us into this session, allow me just share a few insights, and also before that, kindly share. There will be a link and poster to your network, maybe your WhatsApp groups or maybe your statuses, so that your friends, your relatives, and whoever may know can also be able to benefit from this valuable session. Thank you very much. And before we welcome our speaker of the day, kindly allow me to briefly share what the GPAP program is all about in about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so what is GPAP in full? For those who may be wondering, GPAP stands for the Graduate Professional Apprenticeship Program. That's what it stands for. And what's the program about? And it's a reskilling program that is providing you with a hands-on experience. Yes, we pride ourselves in skilling whoever's gone to the program through hands-on training. And why would you want to join this program? To gain experience, to gain knowledge, and to also get the skills which will enable you to access work. The program targets graduates, career changers, students who are in VAC, Form 4 VAC, Senior 6 VAC, students who are currently at university, and recruit every month. We run the program on a monthly basis. We have a new cohort every month, and the program is actually situated at Tech Bazab, Tinda, Kampala. So the program is going to give you 2 years of experience within a period of 3 months. And of course, the program, like I said earlier, the program is ideal for people who are looking for employment, people who are navigating workplace hierarchy. What do we mean here? Maybe you've been stuck at a particular position for a long time in your career, and maybe you feel like you need to take that jump, maybe to a managerial position. What's the purpose of the program? To help you build a successful professional career through mentorship, coaching, exposure, and connection. In terms of capacity, we limit the number of people we onboard onto the program to 5 people per cohort. History, the program started in 2017, and since then, we have had over 130 alumni from over 12 cohorts, and we have actually registered a pretty good report in terms of completion rate. 96% of the people who have gone through percent of the program have registered a completion rate. Over 87% of people who have launched the program say the program has been very impactful to them. A case study. So this is a case study over a period of 10 years of the number of people who have graduated throughout the 10 years. So we got a small sample space of the people who have graduated over the 10 years, which is 4 million people. And out of those 4 million people who graduated, only 700,000 of them have been able to get jobs, which means that 3,300,000 have remained unemployed. Yes, you can see this information that is backed up by media houses like the Uganda Observer, State House Uganda, The Guardian. Yes, so of course a program like this is here to bridge that gap, because many people are graduating but they are lacking the necessary skills that they may need to thrive in a workplace. Why join GPAP anyway? Join GPAP to be able to gain employable skills. Join GPAP to be able to get valuable work experience and networking opportunities, to be able to grow personally, to be able to also fast-track employment opportunities. So these are some of the testimonials from people who have gone through our program. Alinda Rutaraka says, I didn't know how to market content after creating it, but through the GPAP program, I learned how to strategize my content. Best Businje says, I have learned so much through the program. I wasn't familiar with accounting software like QuickBooks, but now I know how to post receipts and expenses. Here we also have some testimonials from people who have been able to watch our mentorship sessions on YouTube. Baruda Marvin says the GPAP YouTube mentorship sessions reminded me that becoming employable is not just about technical skills. Eric Chayune says, I have followed your mentorship sessions and found them insightful, especially on practical skills. Yeah, so these are some of the testimonials from people who have gone through our. And yes, if you see any of these posters that you see here, these are the posters for our program, for the programs that we offer. So kindly, if you see them anywhere, please feel free to share them onto your platforms. These are some of the quotes from the wise men. Tell me I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. Apprenticeship is the most natural way of learning. It allows skills to be passed down while fostering discipline, humility, and mastery. The best education doesn't always happen in a classroom. Apprenticeship empower people to learn by doing, ensuring that knowledge is lived, not just memorized. Yes, so currently we have a 40% discount that is running. If you sign up today, you'll be able to get that 40% discount, which will be 1.5. Yes, and also if you recommend someone to join this program, yes, you can be able to get a 10% discount as well. And of course, these webinar sessions are brought to you free. Feel free to invite your colleagues. Yes, and colleagues, GPAP also join, and yes, colleagues, GPAP offers employable skills, work experience, and fast tracks your career. So kindly apply through this link, and also you can reach out to us through this contact, or maybe visit our website for more information. Yes, and with that, thank you very much for listening. I wouldn't want to waste any more time. Allow me to welcome our presenter of the day, Miss Aggie Turomwe. You're very much welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Otieno. It's such an honor to be given such an opportunity to educate and just share the knowledge I've acquired in podcasting with your community. Clearly, this is a community that wants to learn something new, and we are always interested about sharing the knowledge of podcasting as a new medium of communications, especially here in Uganda. So it's an afternoon. I know people are probably tired. I'm going to try and make this as very participatory as possible so that we all benefit. So when I call up your name, please give me an answer or just share your thoughts, just so we all leave this class when we are able to start our very first podcast, or just understand the science or the economics behind podcast production. Is that okay? Can I have hands raised just to see if all of us are together? Okay, great. So this is what I'm going to present about. By the end of this class, you should know what the industry of podcasting is all about, how to monetize and market potential for podcast content. We're going to analyze the industry. We're going to talk briefly about the Uganda Podcast Association. We're going to see what the opportunities are for us that present themselves. And then we're also going to look at some interesting stats and data. You know, some people want to look at the numbers for it to make sense. And then we'll have a checklist process or exercise where we really get down to what are the steps to start your own podcast, which I believe is the reason to have this class today. Thank you so much, the team at TechBuzz. You have been amazing coordinating and allowing us bring this knowledge to your individuals. I don't know how many of you have heard this saying, everybody is starting a podcast, especially during the first lockdown. Hands up. Any one of you had that saying? Yes, Joshua Donald says they did. Is that true? If you look at the stats of other mediums, if you look at books have been in existence for over 1,200 years. Radio over 130. TV over 100, video games over 60, and podcasts, we're still under 25 years. So that is clearly not true. And then that begs the question, why do you think podcasts are trending more than the other mediums? And we'll come to that. So if you look at the conversations around digital or anything communications or communication mediums, you'll see that people are talking about podcast marketing as well. So where you find video, email, social media, paid content, event marketing, people are also adding podcasts among influencers, among print advertising, among radio, among TV, and that tells us something. Recently, the Spotify for Creators was in Uganda, and they overemphasized the need for us to actually tap into the digital media because there's over 166 million to be untapped. So if you think about podcasts, you think audio on demand. However, a lot of us podcasters are taking our practices from radio. So if you listen to a lot of podcasts, they sound a lot like radio, but podcasts are growing 10 times faster than radio did or is still growing today. And a lot of creators in the podcast space are also making quite a lot more revenue than radio did when it started and when it is today. So if you think podcasts, long form content, if you think podcasts, it's on demand when someone wants to, for example, now we're in class, but if someone wants to check out, say how to start a podcast, and it's playing on radio, they would have missed it because we are here in class today and we're not able to listen to the program that's happening on radio. However, for podcasting, you have a podcast, even if you leave class, you're going to find it there. You will search for the topic, you'll find the content there, and you listen at your convenience. So that's what they mean by audio, content on demand. It used to be audio only, but today, with the advent of video consumption, we're also morphing into audio visual. So podcast today can be both audio and visual. So if you think podcasts, they are long. You can choose to have more content as opposed to the content that we normally see on our radio and TV. So that is me on a good day. That is what I look like. I'm Aggie Patricia Chiromwe. I have been podcasting for close to 7 years now, since 2019. I also created the Podcast Association of Uganda. So we have quite a vibrant society of podcasters, over 200. We are in a WhatsApp group. I think in the WhatsApp group, there are over 120. But there are more podcasters out there that don't know more about the community. I host a podcast called On Uganda and also Elevating Impact. I normally train and give masterclasses to communities that need this information, like Tech Buzz, because you guys are very tech savvy. So people who need this information, I found that would use it to their advantage, because I also got the same training from Cape Town, but also partnered with DW Academy. So now if we go back to the podcast, right? This page is normally interesting for the money makers or for the creatives who are interested in making money. So we said podcast is audio or audiovisual on demand, but there's an equalizer here. For you to access a podcast, you need internet and you need a smartphone, without which you're not able to access an podcast. So that's where the challenge is, or the equalizer. That is why you find that in Uganda, most people who are listening to podcasts are people within the urban centers as opposed to our rural areas. The rural areas are predominantly radio. And that is why they say in Uganda, radio is still king. So if you look at these stats on your screen, if we look at the ad revenue, so ad revenue means who is advertising on podcasts or who is advertising on radio. That is what ad revenue is, advertising revenue. So if we look at the ad revenue of 2022 of radio, it was about 12 billion US dollars. And this was at a growth rate of 5% in the year 2021, 2022. And allow me use these statistics because the equalizer of listening to podcasts or podcast consumptions is a smartphone and the internet. So be you in Florida, be you in Europe, be you in Asia, Africa, it is internet and a smartphone. That's the equalizer. So that's why I feel like even the stats don't differ so much at the end of the day, because we all need internet and a smartphone, and that's only a category that is set out because of those equalizers. As Uganda, we are working on our own statistics so that we are able then to follow up and use those stats in the future. But for now, this is what we have, and allow me use it. So if you look at, so that was it, 12 billion in 2022 at a growth rate of 5%. However, in the year of 2023, there was over 3 billion ad spend on podcasts at a growth rate of 37%. And like I said earlier, there's something about podcasts that is completely trending. And that's why creatives, young people who are tech savvy should really pay attention to this medium and take action to benefit from it. So you see that today there are a lot of media houses who are also choosing to have their own podcasts. If you think globally, BBC, they have a TV, they have a radio, they also have a podcast. NPR, they have TV, they have radio. Fox News, all of these places they have the main channels, but they also have podcasts. Why? Because they want people to actually listen to that content on those platforms. So if they know that there are certain audiences who access internet and a smartphone on podcast medium, they also want to tap into those audiences. And why? Because podcasts can really be relatable as opposed to radio, which sometimes is a lot more scripted as opposed to podcasts where people are just talking their mind out and sharing. Then if you have any questions, we can write them down and then I can answer them after this presentation. So the reality check here is that, of course, everything when you start, it's quite new, right? So and just for your information, the US is the biggest continent that has the podcast consumers. So if you look at how the US started, as of 2013, they were only at 7% of listeners, but today they're almost reaching 50% of podcast listeners. There are a lot of people today who spend 9 hours a week or even 5 hours a day just consuming podcast content. Podcast consumption is really growing, and a lot of brands are choosing to advertise on podcasts. If I may ask, how many of you listen to podcasts? Show of hands. Joshua put up his hand. John put up his hand. So there's 2 of us. Anyone else listens to podcasts? Anyone else? Akelo, do you listen to podcasts? Okay, great. Okay. So I want to then think that the podcast you listen to, you've actually had ads running, right? If you listen to Jay Shetty, or can anyone want to volunteer and tell us which podcast they listen to? Please feel free to speak up. Anyone? Yes, Immaculate? What podcast do you listen to? Emmanuel?
Hello, thank you very much, Patricia, for the session. First of all, I really wanted to say that I appreciate you for giving us the opportunity to learn. So I listen to Jay Shetty a lot, and I listen to some blockchain podcast called When Shift Happens, and a number of others. And really, I've thought about starting one of my own. So
wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And Immaculate, what kind of adverts have you had playing on a podcast? Because I see your hand is raised that you've listened to a podcast.
I had, the podcast I listened to, I've forgotten it, but by Kenyan Finance.
Okay. No, that's
the financial advisors or consultants, I don't remember the actual name. And the adverts, I don't remember any specific one.
okay. But we agree they are podcasts that are having advertisements in their content. It's not like I'm lying, but you've actually had that there are adverts playing in these kinds of podcasts. So now here we see that the genre. So if you think topics of music for podcasts is called genres. So we have sport, we have society and culture, we have comedy, we have news, we have true crime, and all of these topics or genres, somehow they started as someone just having fun, and then they ended up in a genre, right? And that's amazing, because whatever your inspiration, we're going to look at it later, whatever your inspiration is, it is valid, and you will always have someone to listen to it, right? A lot of people want to chase numbers, but then the numbers are probably bought by chatbots. But if you actually think you have a podcast topic to share, there will be someone to listen to it. However, it goes without saying that some topics are more popular than the others, right? So if you think news, why do you think news is popular? Why do you think the news, sports, and comedy, why do you think those topics are ranking high? Someone volunteer to give us an answer. Why do you think different topics are more trending than the others?
Well, I think some of the topics really tap into already popular domains and interests of people, while others are quite a little esoteric. Only a few people would understand them. So I guess that's.
Absolutely. That is absolutely true. For example, if you think music, if you think news, people want to already be involved with the day-to-day and get to know about what's happening around them. Comedy, it's a no-brainer. It makes people laugh. And it could be as simple as that. It makes people laugh. So whatever it is that you have, a lot of topics today are unexplored. So it would be nice for you to think, how many of those in your tech industry, how many of those things are people searching for every single day, and they would need more light upon? Then think that is something you should probably explore. So now if we go into the opportunities, right? From the start of this presentation, I've been mentioning that podcasts are trending more than the others. And allow me say that I think technology is one of the proliferator. Because of the technology we have, especially people who would start a podcast today, are more empowered than we started 7 years ago. You have a lot of tools to help you. You have a lot of tools to help you market the podcast, to monetize, to collaborate. It's amazing. It's just endless. And all of these tools are powered with AI, which is absolutely something we should all tap into. Then we also have a subscription model where some podcasters are asking their listeners, please subscribe to the content, because this is the only way we can continue to grow the podcast and create the content. Then there's a licensing opportunity where media houses or content conglomerates or aggregators reach out to podcasters or creators and ask them, hey, look, we give you this amount of money and you give us content, say weekly or monthly. And the opportunity globally in the other continents, like I mentioned, presents such an opportunity for creators to just start sharing whatever they need to share, especially around change. Think of Asia, think of Africa, the problems we have. If we could share the knowledge we have gathered along the way to help those others that haven't had those solutions, then we are sort of we avoid reinventing the wheel per se, but then find solutions together in a voice that is then put in the podcast medium. So those are the opportunities that we foresee. And as a creator, one needs to know, okay, we talked about adverts at the start. There are surveys that were carried out in 2023 around the length of the adverts. How long is an advert? How long does it have to be for it to be intrusive or less intrusive? So the ones that are more intrusive are 30 minutes long or a minute long. You don't want to have adverts that are so long. However, one thing is true, that this medium is still very new and there are no gatekeepers, there are not set rules already. People are still doing what they want to do and it's passing. For example, if you listen to the Jay Shetty's of this world, Joe Rogan's, they have adverts which are 2 minutes long, 1 minute long, but people are still listening in, people are still downloading their content. So whatever it is you want to do, it can be justified by your passion and your consistency in delivering your content. So it's also nice to mention that there's that content that you normally put at the start of the episode that is not normally recorded at the same time of the main body of the podcast. That is called a pre-roll. The one in the middle of the content is called mid-roll, and then the one at the end, for example, please follow my channel and get to know more about the work that we do, is called the post-roll. Now, there are platforms like Afromobile. Afromobile is constantly calling on creators. If you're a video creator, podcaster, TV presenter, please send us your content and we'll pay you this much for it. So platforms like this actually are playing a critical role in supporting people who are creating this kind of content. And what does it do in the long run? It supports the economies, it grows platforms like these, and it also helps the creators become even better at what they do. Now, the beauty about podcasting is that podcasts, unlike any other medium, will give you the statistics behind your podcast listenership, right? Now, for us, for the podcast on Uganda, they'll show us that 33% of the listeners are in Uganda, 27% are in the US, and 8% Kenya, blah, blah, blah. However, the content varies every now and then depending on the topics, because podcasts are topical, right? Someone goes to search for a topic and somehow they land on your content, as opposed to when, someone puts the post on social media and then they keep playing it. For me, most of the topics, most of the content on podcasts are found by topic, or someone sharing their content on social media, and then people know, oh, they have a podcast, and now they go to the podcast platforms and search for this podcast. So you'll see that the stats are just amazing. So if you look at all platforms, they'll break it down for you here in percentages. If you look at Spotify, and we'll look at it later, then they'll bring it up for you here. However, a country like Uganda, people are not able to access Spotify without a VPN. Now, if you look at the platforms, they'll show you the stats behind what are the apps they use. Some of them use Apple Podcasts, Castbox, web browser, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Spotify for Creators. What devices are they? iPhone, Android, web, they use their web, or Mac, or Windows, yeah? And that's the beauty about the podcast. So now, this is the path forward, because I mentioned earlier, we have over 200 podcasters, people who start a podcast today, but they're not able to keep going a month later. What are the challenges? If you think about the production costs, which most people say this is the biggest challenge. Then you think, okay, there are production costs to produce such an episode or a podcast. How much do I need? But can I also collaborate with people, right? So think about the production cost. Think about the YouTube strategies, because YouTube last year shut down its podcast section, which was the Google Podcast, to promote YouTube Music. Now, what does that tell you as a creative? You think, okay, the biggest search engine in the world, Google, shut down its podcast section, where countries like ours, most people don't have Apple gadgets, while listening to the content. Now, this presents an opportunity for us to also go into video strategies. Then also diversification of our content. So a lot of people will say, okay, but yeah, well, do I have to quit my job? You don't really have to quit your job, or you could decide to quit your job, because if you decide to do all the other things like publishing, writing articles, having merchandise about your content in the podcast and selling it, having live shows and live events about the podcast production, also this could be very interesting, you know. So this diversification, you don't have to worry about, you know, doing just one thing with a podcast. Then the other opportunity is that all the other continents are appreciating podcasts, and the beauty about podcasting is also that it's not limited to the geography. So you can have a podcast here in Uganda, and like we saw, someone in United Arab Emirates is listening. And because of global protections, intellectual property, if you think of Europe, you think of GDPR. If you think of Uganda, we have the Data Protection Act. You need to think about all these protections around content or producing your podcast. Now, these are some of the stats that I want to run us through before we get to the questions, because that will take a bit of a while. But a lot of people will say, okay, it's better I just listen to one advert in a podcast. I don't want to listen to so many adverts, because then I want to press next. However, they'll tell you where people listen to podcasts like YouTube, TV, or other podcast platforms. Podcasts is that platform where people will not play next, because they are busy doing something. They are driving, they're cooking, they're cleaning, that they don't find it intrusive to listen to an ad, right? Also, the ads are not scripted, like we said. So now you're able to think, okay, that is probably a place to go. However, even people today are having podcasts on YouTube. So yeah, do I just want to have my content on YouTube, or I can have my podcast on podcast hosting platforms, but also keep it on YouTube, since the advent of audiovisual today? Then also think, what are the genres that could be interesting for me, right? Am I a funny person? Do I have a lot of information on comedy? Do I have a lot of information on technology, right here? So whatever it is that inspires you, which we will be looking at later, is able to fit into a podcast, and you're able to share it with the world. Then if you see here the stats on podcasting, when we started the podcast on Uganda, we had a lot of women listening to our content. And it looks like, same as the survey that was made here in 2013, there were a lot of men listening to podcasts as opposed to women. Now, I would want one of you to share with us, do you think in Uganda women listen to more podcast content than men? What do you think? Who listens to more content than the other? Which gender? And why do you think that is? Someone volunteer? Immaculate?
I think it's men.
Why?
It's just an observation.
Mm-hmm.
Men tend to have more time to spare, while women are almost juggling a lot of things at home.
We've had this answer a lot. Someone else? A gentleman, do you want to defend?
I would like to
gender?
disagree with it. Yeah, well, I believe it's men for particularly the reason that I think this is personally how I see it. I think we are more on tension of trying to achieve things. So we try to seek for knowledge in places where we're not going to have, where we can access it at any time. And I think, no offense, but women are a little bit more complacent. So they don't explore a lot. And it's just the way I see it.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that would be a conversation for the whole day. Let me see. Maybe someone, I think women, Akelo says, I think women, even if they're busy, still they get time to see them. Then more women, Vanessa says, more women, they listen while doing other tasks, right? Then, yeah. So now if you think, I mean, this discussion can go on and on, but I'm glad I brought it to your attention. I would want you to then bring it down home, right? Contextualize it. Think of it as the equalizer. What is the equalizer? Someone remember the equalizer?
Yeah, internet and what? And smartphone.
Yes, so bring it down to Uganda's economics. Apart from people having time, but who can access internet on a smartphone, and then you be your best judge. So I want us then to go back to the statistics of this the survey that was made. So in 2013 there were more men and less women. In 2023 there were more men and less women. However, the percentages weren't so different. Also for podcasts, they are able to show you who is listening, what age bracket are you targeting, and you're able to see it in your back end. So for us, when we started, there were less men. There were less women. There were so many men, but less women. But today, as of today, 2025, we have 67% of women listeners than men. And then look at our age bracket. So 68% of them are in the age range of 28 to 34, right? Before, we never had people in the 45s and 60s, but today we actually do. So that's the beauty about the podcast back end. You'll see that there are networks. So networks could be a conglomerate or a media house that already has some other things they're doing, and now they venture into podcasts, but they have more genres or more episodes based on topics. For example, let's say TechBuzz, right? TechBuzz decides to have each one of you, Akelo, Marvin, Walter, Immaculate, Maria, each one of you thinks of their inspiration and decide, okay, we will give our content to TechBuzz to publish it for us. So that's what network in layman terms looks like, right? So you have Wondery that produces comedy. It also produces health and fitness genres, health and history content. NPR has news, NPR has arts, NPR has business, NPR has technology, TV, and film. Yes? And then, who do you think has the better view or better insight on who is listening to what? Obviously, these guys, right? So NPR will sit down in a meeting and say, okay, the news podcast is trending as opposed to the business one, or as opposed to technology. So what do we then do about technology for it to be able to reach the charts like news is or like business is? And so on and so forth, right? So networks, that's the concept of networks. And normally these networks sell their content and get advertising for these podcasters. So the last part here is that this is where some people actually choose to listen to their content. They'll listen on mobile devices, and these are the majority of the people. Then you have smart speakers. Someone will enter their office or will enter their room and say, okay, Siri, please play my favorite podcast. Then some of them will listen on their computers and the others will listen elsewhere. So if you look at the smart speakers, these are really growing or applications like Amazon Alexa, iHeartRadio, unspecified apps that are not so clear, but also you have Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So Apple Podcasts is bigger elsewhere as opposed to countries like this where you don't see everyone with an iPhone. And that's pretty much it about the podcast economics. At the end of this presentation, if nothing has been sparked, if your imagination hasn't been sparked or opened, then you really won't like the checklist exercise, because this presentation pretty much gives you an understanding of what the ecosystem of podcasting is about. And then it will help you then produce your podcast better with the knowledge you have gained here. So at this point, I would like to take questions before we actually go into the checklist exercise. You can also type in the chat section for questions. So I'll take questions from here on. So that this presentation was pretty much about the why. After here, we're going to do the how to. So step by step of how you start your podcast using the device you have today to start and finish a podcast. Okay. Do we have questions? They're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Agi. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you think are some of the limiting factors when it comes to creating a podcast? Specifically in Uganda, the podcaster concept is a little bit new to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there are so many. Maybe they could be there, but a lot of us are hearing about this for the first time, that there's actually an organization that governs all the podcasts in Uganda. So, what are some of the challenges that are faced by people starting podcasts, and what is being done by the organization that you lead? I think that's in charge of podcasts in Uganda. What are you doing to try to help people who are interested in come up with a podcast? Yeah, that would be my question.
Okay. Next. Another question?
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Okay, so I came into the call very late. I just wanted to know if the documents will be shared through the registered emails.
Yes, I can share with you the information. No worries.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Questions? Any more questions about what we have discussed about before we go into the checklist?
Okay. Hi, sorry.
What do you find interesting?
Oh.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Go on. Yes, please.
Oh, sorry. Vanessa here. I was just wondering about the diagram that you put. Like,
which page?
That's in the last one on the conclusion. You have total podcasts and total books. Sorry, I also came the last slide, the conclusion slide. When you have like the purple dot for podcast, and then you have the circle.
Yes.
Yeah, this
one.
Yeah, yes. Sorry, maybe I missed that. I was a bit late also into the call, so I don't know.
No worries. Yeah. So we talked about at the start of. Okay, sorry. Ask your question.
My question is about.
Yeah.
Some people, including myself, may be interested in starting a podcast, but we don't know where to start. We lack the information, the assistance. We don't know if you have to enroll for a course in a school, or if there's an organization that can assist you. Fortunately, I've read that you're a consultant. Maybe you can help us and give us direction. Thank you.
Yes. No. So I think we're in the right place. What's the next step? What we are going to do now is go through a checklist exercise. So we're going to go through a checklist exercise, which helps all of us, plan for our podcast. So we want to start a podcast today. What do you do? So luckily, we don't have many questions. The first gentleman asked about the limiting factors of a podcast, of podcast production. And like I mentioned earlier, they can be many, right? Just like any other business or venture, there are so many problems, and they can be relative two individuals, right? Some person may have cameras and the other may not have, because they want to do audiovisual, but they don't have an editor, right? Some people may have a studio, but they may not have, say, guests to invite. So there are so many challenges, but we're going to look at the different stages that you already figure out what do I need to do for me to be able to start my podcast and finish it very well, right? So here we are. I normally have a checklist that I share with you if you'd also want it. With this, you can use it. It's just like planning. It's a strategic plan that helps you go through your podcast session or podcast production sort of vividly, as opposed to just going into things. When I started, this is the wrong one. When I started, we didn't have to plan. We just thought, okay, I need to do a podcast. But yeah, I need to do a podcast, but this is what I have to do. And you just started on the wing. You didn't think about it. You didn't think you needed this, and there was no one to hold your hand. But I got this information when I got my training, and I thought it's only fair that other people should also learn about it. So this is what your plan would look like. Are we able to see the screen? Your podcast plan?
Yes.
Okay, this is great. So this is what you would do, right? You have a podcast plan. Of course, you'd have to put your name on there if someone loses, if you lose this sheet, that someone will bring it back to you. Now, I'd like to ask two of you, can any of you share with us what inspires you? Why do you do what you do? Why are you part of the amazing Tech Buzz community? Why are you waking up every morning, taking care of your family, taking care of your parents? What inspires you in life? Let's hear from you guys. Emmanuel, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, it was up because I had questions, but since you're already talking, I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
But for the question you just asked, so I find it very fulfilling if I can clarify for someone that has confusion on any subjects that I'm already familiar with. It really gives me happiness to see that someone can clearly move forward from a point where they didn't know anything up to the point where I got them. Yeah, I really find comfort in that. And it's
So
really what it is.
Yeah, would it be fair to say that teaching inspires you?
Yeah, very much. So,
Okay. Someone else? At home? At home? Walter? Best? I need 3 inspirations and we'll use that throughout the class. So we have teaching as an inspiration. Someone else is inspired by something. In other classes, some people tell us they hate to be poor. They fear to be poor. So that is an inspiration. They really want to work so hard. Anyone want to volunteer to tell us about their inspiration? What sparks your imagination? Why do you wake up to do what you do? What is your fear? Best Businje? That's a nice name, Best. Best Businje? What inspires you? You can also put your answer in the chat section. We need 3 inspirations for us to move on with this exercise.
I am going to say what I think. Maybe you can help me phrase it better.
Yes.
I am a geospatial professional.
What is that?
Something mapping, surveying.
Okay.
In that line, yeah. So I am inspired by being able to use my knowledge to solve problems.
Yeah.
Like people having land-related problems, trying to understand phenomenon that are related to the earth, the weather, the environment, stuff like that. Yeah. When I come across a solution that solves a certain problem in relation to the environment, to the earth, to land, I feel inspired.
I want to put it. I don't know. You're inspired by the environment or solutions. I don't know, but you get the picture in your head now. It's starting to form. Someone else is saying, "I'm inspired by fear of failure." So success inspires them. For them, they want to be successful, and that is why they get up early in the morning to do what they want. And someone says, "Not sure if this counts as an inspiration, but if I can do it and enjoy myself while being of help to others, why not?" Also, this person is saying, Dalton is saying, they like to offer help. And all of these things are solutions, right? All of these ideas, your inspirations are valid. So this is what you put here. So what inspires you? If you wanted to start a podcast, I would highly advise that you start a podcast around your inspiration. Why? Because you never run out of motivation. Someone says, "I love to work as a man." Paul says he just loves to work as a man, which is correct, because there are expectations of society that, men are providers. So if you work, then you're fulfilling your duty. But if you create a podcast around your inspiration, you're never going to run out of ideas. Even when times are tough, you're going to stay the course because this is what you love. It is part of you. You will make ends meet just for it to happen. So that is what I would advise you if you are to start a podcast. Anchor it on your inspiration. Then the second part of the concept of the podcast process is conceptualizing, right? Now, you're inspired by success, you're inspired to help others, you're inspired by teaching. For example, Paul, what would be the goal for you to work as a man? What would you want to accomplish by doing if you had that podcast? Right? For the teacher, this is quite easy for the teacher, but what goal do you want to accomplish? You already told us about it, because you want to see people understand concepts that are hard for them to understand, right? Now, for the one who is helping people find solutions for the earth, can you put that in a sentence that the goal is clear, it has an accomplishment, it is clear on what you want to accomplish and a timeline. Why is this exercise helpful? This exercise is what you're going to keep telling people who want to listen, people who are going to give you their money to sponsor, people who want to partner with you, people who are going to do your graphics design. You see, this is the goal. If you're making my graphics designs, please make sure you bring out the aspect of helping, of the solution around the environment, of teaching, right? So that is why you need to articulate these things so that it will come easy to all the others to come. If I had to do it over, this is how I'll do it. Then you have to find a podcast name. Felix, what would you name your podcast if you were to have a podcast? Or someone else? Someone wants to volunteer? What would you name your podcast if you had a podcast? Are we there? One volunteer? Just one.
Volunteer. Well, for me, I think I would name it, okay, depending on the topic that I would be talking about, but I think it would be relating to, let's say it's sports. I would say maybe the sports media. Just for example.
Yes, sports media. And I like how Otieno has put it, because when you're having a podcast name, just like any other brand, right? You need to be able to relate your brand name to the name of to the keyword of your idea or topic, right? And that's the easy way of going, because that's the easy way of doing it, because if you have to say you're going to get a random name, for example, he's in sports, he has called it sports media. And the concept is about sports. Now imagine if he called it welding. You see how there's a disconnection between the name and the actual topic of what we are discussing in this podcast. So better you use a podcast name that has a keyword of your subject matter, of your subject topic, as opposed to finding a completely random name. You can even call it your name, your birth name, but with that you have to do a lot of marketing to get to the standard of Apple, to get to the standard of Tesla, which have put a lot of millions to actually get their name known, that Apple is technology. You think Tesla, you think of cars, or sophistication. So the easier way is to make sure that the search engine actually picks up on your name and it brings up it and it optimizes it optimizes it whenever someone is searching for a topic, right? You can do them both, but the option A and option B, what it takes for you to actually get your brand name known. Then originality. If there were so many of us, all of us have one brand or one podcast called Sports Media, how different would we all differentiate from each other, right? So Sports Media, probably Otieno has, someone says, Paul says Market Master. You need to be very different from your counterparts or colleagues, because a lot of us probably are going to talk about the same things. But how do you personalize your content so that someone identifies your content for you, as opposed to you sounding like every other podcast about sports, right? And then the purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? So the goal, the inspiration can sound a bit more like purpose, but they're all different. Goal is accomplishing what you want to accomplish with a podcast in a given timeline. The purpose is why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you doing what you're doing, right? Someone give us a purpose. Why would they be starting a podcast? Volunteer. I look into discussing this is Ashley. I look into discussing people's opinions in different topics. So my podcast will be named My Opinion, right? So Ashley's reason would be discussing people's opinions in different topics, right? So look at the purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? The goal is accomplishing something within a given timeline. Inspiration, what inspires you in life, right? If you know those things, you easily explain it to everybody, every stakeholder you're going to meet along the journey. Then the target audience, think of who is going to listen to my podcast. For the Sports Media, it's very clear that your very first audience will be those audiences that are interested in sports. Then others will come along that want varied information. But think of your target audience, draw a picture of them, give them an identity, right? You see your identity card. Where are they? Which year were they born? How old are they? What do they do? Profession, give them a persona that when it comes to advertising, for example, advertising your podcast on podcast platforms or social media, you're easily able to fit the target content into the app, and it finds you the right people who are meant to receive this kind of information. Value and ethics. What do you believe in? What do you stand for that you know for sure you cannot not do it if you did it, right? If you cannot do it if it happened. For example, we know that, for example, one of our podcasts, the podcast on Uganda, even if we get a lot of money for advertising and it's coming from a sports betting company, we would not do it. Why? Because we are talking about building our economy, and then we are also telling young people, who are the majority of our population, to do sports betting. It's really not, they're not in sync. So if you're a Christian podcast, why would you be swearing on that podcast? If you are an entertainment podcast, you need to be nice and happy, the energy, so that people are entertained. Yeah, but do you get my point? So the values and ethics are those things that are your standard, that yeah, this is what we stand for. Then for the impact, what change do you want to see, right? The teacher one told us they want to see that people actually now understand paradigms that were normally had. Sports media, the gentleman likes sports, and then he wants people to probably start sports after this. Solution on the environment, Earth, she wants to see climate action, right? She wants to see people sorting their trash. She wants to see people being more responsible with the environment because it's our children's future, right? And in this way, when you find these things that are above your goal, your purpose, your impact, and your inspiration, they're going to easily help you see, okay, I'm interested in finance. I'm going to be talking about money. Who is the best sponsor bet? It's the money people, the financiers, the bankers, the microfinance lenders. Who, if I'm talking about environment, who are my target audiences? You think about UNEP, you think about GGI, you think about the UN, UNDP, organizations that are already doing things in your space, right? Sports betting, right? Because people are there betting all the time. That is probably your target audience, right? So that if you already know the above, then you're able to target who can be able to fund your podcast, which is normally the biggest challenge. Then for those of you who want to self-fund, if you have 100K, right? Normally we have exercises in our classes where we record something and then we edit it, which we'll also do briefly here. But if you know that you have 100K, see how much 100K can get you, right? See how much time you're spending on recording, editing, Does it fit within the 100K? If you know that, then you know, oh no, actually the 100K gives me 2 episodes. So you're able to plan ahead of time and think, okay, I have 100K and this will bring me 2 episodes. I need more 100K to produce these amounts of episodes for me to make a season, right? And we'll come into that later, into what we actually have to do. Then this is the branding. The branding aspects are sort of bringing awareness to what you're doing. The cover art, we talked about it earlier, right? What elements are going to be in your cover art that are speaking to the topic of your podcast, right? If you are a market, if you are a money podcast, are you going to put money in your podcast, or are you going to put your face or the cover art or just the name? Think about it. Otherwise, all these small details contribute to bringing awareness to your podcast. Who is going to be your host? Who's going to be the voice on your podcast? Is it yourself? Are you partnering with someone else to be able to work with them? How are you going to do that, right? What is your format? Are you having guests? Are you debating? Are you having just yourself and you narrating the whole podcast? Or you're having multi-voices on your podcast? That is something you need to think about. And that goes into also the branding of the podcast. Earlier, we talked about diversification, and this is where the model spin-offs come in. Some people are having live shows, some people are having merchandise sales, some people are having content, say blogs, more content written about their content, about the content they actually got from the podcast. So what do you want to do with the content of your podcast? Then can I ask somebody, so I take a break from talking, how often would you want to release your podcast? Someone volunteer?
I think a week is a good frequency.
A week?
I believe it's
once a week. Yeah. So once a week, someone else, also Vanessa says once a week. Now the frequency is determined.
I think it will depend on the topic and how trendy it is.
So topic and how trendy it is. However, there's also someone else who says Stainless says weekly. So this frequency is dependent. Someone else says, what are some of the resources we can reference for statistical evaluation of the podcast economy? Things like
I'm sorry, those are just questions, but perhaps you could answer them later. Just wanted to post them. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. So if you think about the frequency, then it's predetermined by your budget. How much money do you have? Because weekly is quite a lot of work. In Uganda, we have a gentleman called Lawrence Tamale. He actually releases episodes every day. So is that your full-time job? Is that what you're doing? Or you have other things you're doing and this is a part-time. So the frequency is determined on your budget and your availability. Language and tone, right? We talked about it briefly above, but what is the tone of your podcast? If you claim to be a comedy podcast, is it really funny? If it's a financial podcast, finance podcast, let it have, statistics on banks, what are the current rates and like give people value and they know for sure that is a business podcast. For sure that is a comedy podcast. For sure that is a news podcast. That is what language and tone means. Then returning elements, and these are also built up into the language and tone. What are those elements that, for example, someone knows you for sure that this podcast is a business podcast? It's because someone is doing research, they're giving you value that, you're not finding anywhere available. They are making you laugh, You click on Ankomo, you're sure it's going to be a fun one. You're going to laugh. And it can be just as simple as that. It's simple as it being impactful, it being valuable, it being energizing, it being knowledgeable, it being motivational. So whatever you want to do, think about your returning elements and make sure for every episode you release, they're in there. So now we're going to talk about the formatting of your podcast. You need to think about the different aspects. Do you want to have seasons or do you want to have series? Now, seasons is like one of those seasons you watch on Netflix or these radio tapes. Prison Break, yeah, and then they went for a season break. So they have 12 episodes and then they have a break. They review how it performed and how it didn't perform, and then they come back. Or do you want to produce and release your episodes year in, year out, right? Meaning that you're releasing weekly. Every week you have a podcast coming out, and this is happening for the next year, for the whole of the year. So that is also determined by how much money you have at your disposal. So there are seasons. Either you do seasons or series. Seasons can be limited. You can have unlimited or limited, right? Then do you also want to have a pilot? Do you want to have a teaser? Do you want people to know that, okay, this is what it's all about? And the first things we looked out in the conceptualization is what you talk about. You say, okay, this is what we are going to do. This is what we are all about. This is my goal. This is what inspires me, you guys. My mother died of cancer, and this is what I have learned in treating her. So if you have cancer, the goal, if you have cancer, I would really want for you to learn how, what from my journey, how I treated my mom. And then the purpose, I really don't want you to suffer because this is what I had to go through and you don't have to go through that same. And then the impact is I hope that a lot of people get more knowledge about treating cancer this way that I did for my mother. You get that way people are able to understand, okay, this is what the podcast is about. Then they already subscribe if they want to. So the add-ins is what we looked at the start in the pre-roll, the mid-roll, and the post-roll. Normally, in these roles, that's where the adverts put their placements. That's where you place the adverts. Then now it's time to produce. We need to manage, right? You need to manage the different roles. Above, we have seen that you need a graphics designer, you need a host, right? You need a host, you need a graphics designer, you need someone to conceptualize with, or you need to think about it yourself and think, okay, I need to write all these things down. So you need a copywriter. Below, we're going to see you need editing, you need a studio, you need so many things, right? So even if you're a one-man team, you need to allocate the different roles within a specific time if you want to release weekly, knowing that the target is weekly. We need to release these episodes per week. If you do one thing more than the other, then you're going to lose out on the other tasks and then you lag behind, and that's how you're not consistent with releasing. So if you manage your time well and make sure that every role has been allotted time, you're then able to release consistently. Now it's time to prepare. We have topic angles. Let's say, for example, the gentleman of the sports news, right? There's so much talk about sports. How are you going to break down your topics for them to be interesting and not sound repetitive? That's what the topics and the angles means, right? Find different ways of telling different stories about sports. And that is what will keep the people coming back, as opposed to them saying, oh no, they're pretty much the same thing. He talks about the same old thing every time. Then storytelling, right? A lot of people, there's so many ways to tell stories. A lot of people are telling their stories differently. Find your way of telling your story, as long as you know that you're giving value to the listeners, right? There's a known way of telling a story is by, focusing on the character. Tell us who they are, what they do, why are they doing what they're doing, and what are the challenges. Normally that's the story format. But today we are seeing people like Joe Rogan who are just saying anything and it's passing. They're getting 4 million views in 4 days, right? Meaning 1 million people are listening to him content every single day. It goes back to the medium being a new medium. There are no gatekeepers. Whatever you think is right will go, as long as you actually convince people to join you. Then scripting. There are a lot of tools today that can help you to script your content. It is not a challenge. A lot of people today want to be more authentic as opposed to scripting. So you go into the interview live, speak to the person, have a more authentic conversation as opposed to reading the whole thing. Then think of a location. When you're recording your episode, think of a location. Is it quiet enough? Is it favorable for the recording? When we started, we were told, you have to be recording in a silent place. We had a BBC masterclass. We had a podcast masterclass with the BBC team, Africa Daily, and they told us, sometimes we actually record on WhatsApp. Yeah, a journalist is speaking to a president on WhatsApp, and they record that voice. Tools today have been modified, have been perfected to accommodate creators. Sometimes they actually lock themselves in a car, because a car has soundproof, that you sound like you're in a studio if you could take a call from a car or record something from a car. So location also matters. However, a lot of tools today will show you that location doesn't matter. They are going to put a studio effect in the location, in the audio you say taped on the streets of Kampala. Equipment. So in the podcast group or community, we have a list of podcast studios in Uganda that you can either go and hire, record your content, and they edit it for you, and also shops where you can buy equipment from. However, you can actually start with your smartphone. Your smartphone can be a place where you actually start to record. Like I said, all these apps, the tools have been perfected to accommodate the creator. If you check on your phone, you actually have a voice recorder. So it will be interesting for you to be able to utilize this tool, right? We are going to look at editing, and I'm going to show you a very simple tool that everybody, or at least most podcasters, are using, right? Most podcasters are using a tool called Hindenburg or Descript, but I use Descript, for example, and I'll be showing you what it does. It can add for you music. So music, what does normally music do to content? So think of a stories. Let's say someone is telling crime stories, right? And then they want to emphasize that a scene or a topic that someone died and it was sad. They put sad music in the background. It normally evokes a lot of emotions. Or think something exciting, then someone puts a happy background sound. It also normally helps. Then there are some people who have podcasts, but it's just their voice. No music, no nothing, no intro, no outro. It's just their voice from start to finish. And that is also powerful. It goes to show that our voices are pretty much very powerful, right? Then think of the guest. Think of your guest when you're preparing for the episode. Think of who they are. Do some research. We had once a guest who said, we really like your questions because it's not the usual questions we have, Try and ask questions that are not already on the internet. Some people ask, okay, so who are you? Where do you come from? And some guests really don't like that. So find out about your guests, find out what they like and what they don't like so that you're able to accommodate them. Now, at this juncture, we're going to sort of role play, right? We're going to have a recording. So one of you should volunteer. I'm going to record here with my voice recorder on my phone. And I just want you to tell me what you like about TechBuzz, the TechBuzz community. What do you like about this place? What do you benefit that you keep coming to events like these? What do you want the world to know about it, right? So tell us why you like this place, why do you keep coming, and what is a fact that the world doesn't know about it, or what the world is missing out from not being a part of TechBuzz. Is that okay? Then you sign off with your name and you say, I'm Aggie Patricia Turomwe, whatever your title is. Is that fine? Is that clear? Do we have a volunteer? I'm going to record you from here, and then we're going to use this tape to edit it to show you how easy editing can be.
Could you kindly come again?
So we're going to do an exercise, a recording exercise. So we say that in this class, we want to leave this class knowing how to do our own podcast. And this is what the exercise is about. We are going to get a volunteer who is telling us two things. One, they're going to answer the question, what they like about the TechBuzz community. What do you like about this place? Why do you keep coming? Is it such insightful conversations that you like to tap into? Whatever it is, you tell us. Then the second is what you want the world to know about TechBuzz because they're missing out and they're not part of TechBuzz. Then you sign off with your name. My name is Aggie Patricia Turomwe. I'm the CEO of Agile Media Africa. Are we ready? Are you going to be the volunteer, Otieno?
I wanted to, but I feel like I would be cheating.
Okay, someone else? Someone else who is not in management. Someone else, guys, we need tape to edit.
Let me try.
Yeah. Okay. I've started recording. You always need to remember how to press record. A lot of people forget to record, and then the guest goes and they think, oh my God, now I have to call them again. There's nothing as embarrassing as that. So always press the record button. So I have pressed the word record. We can start.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm here to tell you about TechBuzz. TechBuzz is an award-winning co-working space. It has affordable co-working space for different groups of people. And more to that, it creates opportunities for the youth in employment, apprenticeship, and also it gives platforms for engagement and knowledge sharing. Thank you. I'm Immaculate Asimo.
Thank you very much. Now that was a simple exercise. However, when we do it physically, a lot of people don't believe that they have recorders on their phones. They think, wait, what? I have a recorder? Okay, so now we are going to transport this recording to the tool. The tool is called Descript. I'm sharing now. I'm sharing now so that we are able to edit it. A lot of people say, well, podcast, we don't have editing tools. It's quite hard to edit. So this is what the editing tool looks like. It's called Descript. So this is what Descript looks like. This is what the logo looks like, and it's pronounced Descript up here. So if you have a new project, you come here and say new project. Remember, this was an audio. This is what their logo looks like. But if I wanted to, I hope you see my screen. Do you see my screen? Hands up to confirm. Okay. So if I wanted to record Immaculate earlier, I would have recorded here, but I wanted to test it with your phone so that you know that this is the phone. Now, the audio I'm going to add here, I recorded it on my device here. Now I sent it to my computer, and now this is it. So this is what happens, right? All the tools have amazing AI properties. For example, now the audio is being transcribed into script. So it's depending on how fast your internet is, it can be done in less than a minute or even less than 5 seconds. So the script is going to be written here. Initially, it was not a video, it was audio. So such tools come with a studio for you to be able to generate image with AI, or there's something they call what? Elements, or stock, right? So you can add let's see, it says something technology, you can add it in here, then add technology and add technology and add, right? So this is the lady. What's her name? She said.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm here to tell you about TechBuzz. TechBuzz is an award-winning co-working space. It has affordable co-working space for different groups of people, and also that it creates opportunities for the youth in employment, apprenticeship, and also it gives platforms for engagement and knowledge sharing.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I'm Immaculate Asini.
So you see what this tool will do. You come and say edit for clarity, submit. It will remove all these words it's saying that it's underlined. So imagine you don't have time and you're just rushing and you come here and say remove everything. Let's see what it sounds like. That was.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to tell you about TechBuzz. TechBuzz is an award-winning co-working space. It has affordable co-working space for different groups of people. More than that, it creates opportunities for the youth in employment, apprenticeship, and also it gives platforms for engagement and knowledge sharing. Thank you. I'm Immaculate Asini.
So do you see what this tool has done? What people would claim that would take such a long while, it has done it in 1 minute, right? Under 1 minute. Here, you imagine you have a tape that is 3 hours long. You have interviewed a gentleman and they can't stop speaking, but then your editor needs it quickly, or you need it quickly to release for the next day. Remember, our timeline is weekly. You come here, you just say, create clips for social media, create highlight reel, which will inform your editor that, hey, look, this is what this is what the conversation was about in just 6 minutes, right? It can write a blog for you. It can make clips for you for social media. It can draft a YouTube description. It will write show notes. So really, there's no excuse here in editing, right? And a lot of you people will say, okay, but it's not free. You have to pay this amount. But yeah, a lot of things are not free in life. But if you think about how much you have to pay as opposed to using a real human being, then it takes a lot of time, right? And in lieu of time as well, I need to go back to the podcast plan, but I hope you get the concept, right? Yeah, so now we have recorded our very first episode. Imagine we already had a trailer that was already telling us about what TechBuzz does. This is the community, and I met Othien already mentioning to you guys what you do. Now you have your first episode. We have recorded it, right? We have edited it. The tools to use are Descript, are Hindenburg. There are so many tools there. There's CapCut. Now you're ready to publish, right? You finished, you have downloaded in that tool. You can download the clip as an audio, as a video. You can direct it straight to YouTube, or you can download it straight to your podcast. You can direct it straight to your podcast hosting platform, right? Now, what are the podcast hosts? They are hosts. So there are two things that people normally confuse. There's podcast hosts and podcast distributors. Now, what I showed you earlier, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, those are podcast distributors. So hosts are the places which host your podcast. And they are Buzzsprout, they are Spotify for creators, there's Podbean, there's Podcast, there's podcasts, there's Libsyn. So those are hosts. Even if you Google it now, you'll see there's a difference between hosts and distributors. Now, the hosts will distribute your content to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. So all those where your listeners will listen. Now, there are two main important things. There's that platform where you as a creator host your podcast, and then there's that platform, the creator tells their listener to go and find their podcast. They're not the same things, they're different, and it's good to know. Where do you tell your listeners about the content? For example, you have uploaded your podcast. Where would you normally tell people to go and listen? Can I have a volunteer?
On X.
On X, right? Somewhere else? Yes, please, your hand is up. Oh, Immaculate, it's the same. Okay, so think of the social media platforms, think of the other communication platforms you normally use on a day-to-day basis. Use those platforms for your podcast for your podcast promotion. Think email, think digital, think everything digital. And social media is under that, email marketing is under that. If you have an opportunity to be on TV, radio, tell them about your podcast. Why not? If you have an opportunity to be at an event, tell them I host a podcast. If you're at a family gathering, tell them, oh, by the way, I started a podcast. If you are anywhere, word of mouth is still winning. Use it, right? Tell people when you're launching, build up some anticipation, right? Let people know I will be launching in July. Subscribe today so that you don't miss out. It's like pre-ordering a book. Make sure people have already subscribed before you actually launch. Then the other thing to take note of is the legalities of podcasting. Like I mentioned earlier, intellectual property. You will say something here today that is demeaning or tarnishing someone's name in Russia. They will come for you in one way or the other. So please, if you steal people's names, don't use other people's names. Just try and make sure that you're as original as possible and you're not copying other people's things, because the law, if it works, it will come back to bite. Then publishing rights, there are a lot of, for example, I mentioned the podcast host Buzzsprout. For example, let's compare Buzzsprout and Spotify for creators or podcasters. Spotify for podcasters is free to host your platform. However, Buzzsprout, you pay about $15 a month. Now, Buzzsprout is not going to share your information to other third-party cookies, which Spotify for creators will gladly do because you don't pay them money and this is how they get money. So you need to think about those publishing rights and see, do they affect you or not? Some people in Uganda say, yeah, now me who is in Uganda, what do I have to lose, But think about things like that. Then the very last one is the terms of use. A lot of people, when you now have your idea in mind and you've packaged it properly, like we have talked above, people want to give you contracts and say, yes, we want to give you this money, 10 million a month, sign here. A lot of people don't read until they want to come out of that contract. So I urge you to read the contracts, make sure you are okay with all the clauses, especially the ones that have exclusivity for perpetuity. They want your content forever. They own you forever. Read all those things and make sure you are able to be fine with the decision you've made. And that is the end of the podcast masterclass. I wonder if we do have questions at this point that will be all-encompassing. Is there something you've learned? Is there something you haven't learned? Do you need more elaboration on something? I got this training in Cape Town. It took us 10 days of just listening, waking up and listening to podcasts and analyzing them and thinking, what did they do right? What did they do wrong? But this I normally package in 2 hours. So I can imagine it can be quite a lot of information, but please ask any questions that you might have because we still have 12 minutes to end this session.
Yeah, thank you very much for the session. And I first of all would love to appreciate. Now I realize there's a sense of community in the podcast ecosystem because I was planning to actually start a podcast in July, but I only have a friend that is a sound engineer, so I've been asking him so many questions about what gadgets to use and all those technical things, but I didn't have someone I could reach out to, regarding the other dynamics of podcasting, it's a wonderful thing to know there's someone I could reach out to. And if you don't mind, could you please share the link to the WhatsApp group?
Yeah.
And then the questions I wanted to ask earlier. First question is, are there resources you could share on places we could go to do some statistical evaluation on the people that listen to podcasts? Perhaps if I wanted to start a podcast on technology, like somewhere I could go and look at the different demographics, like which people would most likely listen to my podcast, what kind of devices would they normally use, what time do they have of the day, kind of like giving me an insight in how best I can produce information for them so that it's available at the time when they really need it. And then second is...
Wait, who does that? I really don't know if there's even a report on any industry like that. Is there one?
No, I'm asking because I've been trying to find one, but it's all been in vain.
No, because it's not there. There's no one who is going to tell you that this is what your customer is doing at this point, and you need to sit down. If your topic is about sports, sit down and think, okay, when my listener or prospect listener is waking up, this is what they listen to. They pray. They wake up at 5 a.m., either pray or go straight to the gym, come back, shower, drive to work, sit at their computer the whole day, have lunch, sit at their computer the whole day, finish at 5, then drive back home or drive to the bar. So for you, that's when you need to think, okay, the best time for them to listen to the content is either in the morning when they're driving to work or not. So map their journey in the week and see when best they listen to that kind of content. then program that content for releasing. Most people like content to be released in the weekends because most people have free time over the weekends. A lot of people say if you release during Monday, people are busy with work. And that's if your target audience is professionals. If it's not professionals, then you can release any day. But yeah, no one is going to give you that kind of specific detail, but you have tools today. You can just go in ChatGPT and say, if I want to start this kind of podcast, who would be my audience? What would they do? So sort of get it yourself and then test it. Normally it's a try and error. In this digital economy, it's a try and error. You need to try and see what works and what fails, and then repeat. See what works. Don't do it again, or try the other way and then make it work for you. That's what I would suggest. But sorry, I cut you short. You need to continue what you were saying.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then my second question was about choosing what mode of delivering information. Is there some kind of insights you could offer? Perhaps if I'm doing a particular subject, but there are certain mediums that are not favorable. Like maybe if I wanted to do a podcast on technology, would it be best if I do an audio visual or I do simply an audio? Are those the kind of insight?
Yeah, so I mentioned at the start of the class that YouTube or Google shut down its audio only podcast, which is Apple Podcast, to promote YouTube music. And you will see the other trends in the other mediums are that people are consuming video more. And what does that insight give, or how insightful is it for a podcaster who was only audio only? It tells you need to morph into video strategies. And even if you don't want to be on video, you need to find ways to deliver your content to your audiences who want video, right? And then you decide. I can tell you that this is what is happening, but if you don't have the money to do it, if you can't do it yourself, this is all, insightful, but not applicable to you. So I would advise that you first sit down with this, what is it called? With the podcast plan. Look deeply into yourself, because you need to be true to yourself in terms of what you can afford, what you can't afford. Sit down, get the time, now do it all yourself. Most podcasters do these things themselves, and then they're able to figure it out along the way. Like I said, it's a new medium. A lot of people are just trying things out. And then if you have someone to break it down for you in two hours, well and good, then you have a starting point. But a lot of it is actually you saying, I have started, and not wanting to be perfect on the first go. Yesterday, someone was telling me, oh, I don't sound right. I told them, you can never be perfect in your first episode. You will hear all the wrong things, but as long as you've gotten it out of the way, you have signed up an account on Buzzsprout or Podbean, you have gotten it out of the way. So you need to start. You really need to start if you have something that's burning for you to share with the world.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm asking so many questions, but it's because I'm really interested in the subject.
Yeah.
So what podcast host would you recommend for a person doing a podcast in Uganda, perhaps? Because I personally use Podbean, but I realized for most of the podcasts, there are episodes that are always skipped. So you find only a few of them that are perhaps popular or that have been sponsored to be free. So I wanted my podcast to be initially fully free, or perhaps even to have an account on any podcast host.
Yeah.
Which one would you recommend?
So I would recommend the names. So Buzzsprout, Spotify for podcasters, Podbean, Libsyn, most of them are free apart from Buzzsprout. So you go search on their interface, because some people are more tech savvy than the others. Apart from it being free and not free, so Buzzsprout you have to pay for. Your content will be there 90 days, and then after it will go down. But if you choose if you think that, okay, I like the interface of Buzzsprout, it's okay for me, you see that they're typing easy and it's for you, it's working well, then you choose that. And that's why I give the options of the many. Otherwise, most Ugandans use the free one, which is Spotify for podcasters. It used to be called Anchor back in the day. Now they rebranded to Spotify for podcasters. But you need to know, you need to test it. Go there, see the look and feel. Do you think your audiences will like how it shows when they're listening? There are so many things that you need to consider, but you need to be comfortable with it because it will demotivate you. Like a lot of things will happen that, if it doesn't feel right, you think, okay, now I have to stop because I need to make it right. But then it stops. It distracts the process. So check them out, check which one is best for you, and then go with it. For example, when I started out with Libsyn until I had to check out the others, and I thought, Libsyn is quite old. It's like for old people. It has an old look, and I didn't think the interface was user friendly. So that's why I chose. So now we host on Buzzsprout and Anchor for Spotify for podcasters. So you also need to try it yourself and see which one is best.
Okay. One very last question.
Yeah.
So if I was trying to make a choice of where to host, would you recommend I choose something that would allow me to kind of do self-distribution rather? Like I have the podcast hosted on their platform, but I could kind of pick a link or something and then transfer access to that podcast somewhere else, maybe on my very own site.
Yeah, every podcast hosting platform allows you to do that. So they give you a link which is called an RSS feed. So that's the feed you put on your website. That's the feed you put on other hosting platforms. So it's possible.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Need more elaboration on the terms of use. Best Businjo, the terms of use, especially in contracts, as applied to contracts, you need to read every clause in those contracts, because a lot of people will say they want your content exclusive to themselves because they're paying you money, then the creator has no rights with that. So please read all the content, all the clauses in your contract so that you're not sidelined in that sense. Then there's thank you was really useful as an intro. Then Emmanuel recommends Podbean. Yeah, I think Podbean is also good. Then what are some resources we can reference to for statistical evaluation? So I can send you some. So for example, in the presentation, there was Edison. There are some known podcast researchers, but all of them are foreign. There's Edison. Let me see. There's the Infinite Dale, which is, it always produces reports every. Let me just share my screen so that you see. And that's why I leave that's why I leave those resources there so that you're able to see. But there are a lot of research companies that are writing reports on podcasts that you think, okay. So there's this one, for example, the Infinite Dale. Then Edison Podcast Metrics. Then this is Macmillan. This is their logo. I need to send you how they write it. But if you say Macmillan, this is their logo. If you type research, podcast research, you'll find it. And that's pretty much it. Edison is, I think, the biggest. Then you have the Infinite Dale and Macmillan. Those are the platforms I would give you. We are working on a research report here for podcasters in Uganda for us to be able to know what the consumption is like and things like that. Yeah, if we have that, then we can release it. But as you know, most things need funding, and we are working slowly, so at our own pace. But it will finally be out. Then Miss Immaculate is asking for how they can further engage me. You can get me on my WhatsApp. This is it. Then you can ask questions on there. Please join this group, the WhatsApp group for communicate for WhatsApp for podcasters in Uganda, because if I'm not available, someone else can help you, because these people are willing to share their knowledge. They're willing to give you as much information as possible that you want for you to be also able to thrive in this podcasting industry. So thank you so much. I will give it back now to the host. It was a pleasure facilitating you interesting individuals on how to actually start and learn to podcast. So thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Miss Agi. This has been such a very insightful session, because I know for the most of us who have been on this call, at least have been having the bare minimum of knowledge when it comes to podcasting. I'll speak for myself. I had someone asking a lot of questions. What being what? It seems some people have more knowledge than some of us. Yeah, but on behalf of TechBuzzHub, I would really like to thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to share some of these insights. You know, in the day and age that we are in, everything is going digital. And it's a bit of your advantage to jump on the wagon before you get left behind. Yeah, so we really appreciate you. So for those of us who joined a little bit late, I'll just recap about what GPAP is. Our host, Miss Agi, we don't want to keep you waiting. You're free to leave, yeah, but you can also stay along and listen. It really depends on your schedule anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me listen in. You can continue.
Okay. So for those of us who joined late, briefly when we were beginning, before we started this call, I just highlighted what GPAP is about. GPAP is a graduate apprenticeship program in full. And this program is run by TechBuzzHub, for those of you who may be wondering. And the program is basically designed to give you a 2-month experience in a period of give you a 2 years experience in a period of 3 months. Someone may be wondering, how is that possible? And someone may be wondering, what is GPAP about? What is the target audience? As I said earlier, our target audience is for people who feel like maybe they want a career change, or maybe they feel like they want to upskill, or maybe someone recently out of campus and they feel like definitely when you're out of campus, you'll have the experience. There's still a lot of things that you don't know. So we provide you with a training that equips you with the knowledge, not just the knowledge that we get from school, but the knowledge that, the actual experience of working in a working environment, like etiquette. What are the do's and don'ts in a working environment? Communication skills. How do you communicate with your workmates? These are things that you don't really get from school. So this program, as I said earlier, in a period of 2 months, in a period of 3 months, you are getting experience that would have taken you 2 years to get. And it is mostly hands-on based, which means you are doing things practically. You are participating in real-life projects. You are getting industry tips from professionals. We have people who are more experience in the field. Yeah, and some of our areas of some of the target areas that we have could be, we have software engineering, human resource, digital marketing, accounting and finance, multimedia and production, research and projects, proposal writing, sales and marketing. So for those of us who may want to reach us out, we had the presentation earlier, but due to some challenges, we couldn't share. But I can just read to you our contacts. Zero 2799754 and MTN is 039213. Feel free to also swing by our website www.techbuzzhub.org and you can check out for yourself. And with that, I would like to once again thank Miss Agi. The other name gives me a time to pronounce, so I will not attempt. I may end up biting my tongue.
Turomwe.
I will stick with Agi. Thank you very, very much. I can't appreciate you enough for taking time to share with us some of these insights. Yeah, so with that, I would like to wish all of us a wonderful week. Feel free to join us next week, same time. We shall be having a different type of conversation. All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye. You know, your co-host